Imagine your great-grandparents in 1931. A two-room house in rural Ohio, a wood stove, a pantry shelf lined with mason jars they filled themselves last September. Their combined household income for the entire year was $900. One in four Americans around them had no job. The bank holding their savings had already closed, and they owed almost nothing to anyone. They wasted almost nothing they owned. And on what your brain would classify as extreme poverty, they quietly built the foundation for the largest middle-class expansion in American history. Now picture yourself this week, sitting on a couch in a decent apartment, a smartphone in your hand worth more than their car, two streaming subscriptions you forgot you were paying for, a coffee order costing more than their daily grocery budget, and a bank account balance that makes you hesitate before opening the app. The US personal savings rate sat at 3.6% in early 2026. 51% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now, including a meaningful number earning over $150,000 a year. Your great-grandmother had 18 months of food in her pantry on a fraction of your income. You probably have 18 days of expenses and savings, if that. So what did they know that you do not? Or, more honestly, what did they do every single day that your family quietly stopped doing about 3 generations ago? Today I'm walking you through 25 Depression-era money habits that still build wealth in 2026. None of them are complicated. All of them have been quietly working for a generation that started with nothing. Before we get into it, hit subscribe and leave a like. Now, let us get into it. Habit 1. Pay yourself first before anything else leaves the account. Your great-grandmother had a mason jar on top of the refrigerator. The moment any money came in, a portion went into that jar before rent, before groceries, before anything. The average American saves 3.6% of disposable income because most people pay every bill and every impulse first and try to save whatever is left at the end of the month. There is never anything left. The issue is sequence, not willpower. Set up an automatic transfer for the day after payday at a number that feels slightly uncomfortable. Then live on what remains. Life adjusts within 2 paychecks. The money you do not pay yourself first, you simply do not get. Habit 2. Define what enough looks like and refuse to expand past that line. When the economy recovered in the late 40s, your great-grandparents' income tripled, and they did not triple their lifestyle. They had already defined enough. They kept the same modest house, the same car, and watched the bank account quietly grow. In 2026, income goes up and expenses go up slightly faster. The margin stays flat. Write down your enough this week. What home is genuinely sufficient? What car gets you where you need to go? Earn past that line without expanding past it, and every dollar of every future raise becomes wealth instead of overhead. Habit 3. The envelope system modernized for 2026. In your great-grandmother's kitchen, there were envelopes in a wooden drawer, one for rent, one for groceries, one for utilities, one labeled emergency. When the grocery envelope was empty, groceries were done for the month. Studies find that people spend 15 to 30% more using cards instead of physical cash because handing over real money creates a friction that digital transactions erase entirely. The 2026 version is separate accounts or budgeting apps with hard category caps. Groceries get a number for the month. When that number is gone, groceries are done. You're not bad at spending. You're spending without ever feeling the money leave. Habit 4, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. That was the actual phrase stitched onto kitchen towels in Depression-era homes. A 4-part decision tree covering 90% of all spending decisions before any money left the house. Use it up means finish the bar of soap before opening a new one. Wear it out means shoes get replaced when the soles are genuinely gone, not when a new style drops. Make it do means the thing you already own is good enough. Do without means, if none of the first 3 apply, ask whether you actually need the thing or whether the urge is coming from boredom or status anxiety. Apply this mental loop for 1 month, and the dollar amount that stops leaving your account is conservatively between $3,000 and $8,000 per year. Habit 5. Cook almost every meal at home. In 1932, eating out was a once-a-year occasion. The average American household now spends thousands per year on takeout and delivery, where the same meal costing $8 at the restaurant costs $19 by the time fees and tips are added. A household spending $50 a day on prepared food versus $12 on home-cooked is losing close to $14,000 a year. That same $14,000 invested at 8% annually becomes over $1 million across a working career. Master 5, cheap, fast, satisfying meals you can cook on autopilot, and roughly 90% of your food spending problem disappears. Habit 6, stretch one protein across multiple meals. Depression-era cooks could feed a family of 6 off one chicken for 4 nights. Night 1, the roast chicken. Night 2, leftover meat in a casserole. Night 3, bones simmering into broth for soup. Night 4, whatever remained, folded into rice. Nothing wasted, and one $12 bird became 4 full meals for 6 people. Buy a whole rotisserie chicken on Sunday for $8. Plan 3 nights of meals around it. Save the bones for broth. You just turned an $8 purchase into roughly $35 of restaurant equivalent meals. Apply this thinking across every protein, and your grocery bill drops meaningfully without anyone in the household noticing. Habit 7, buy in bulk and store what you can. A Depression-era kitchen had 50 pounds of flour, a sack of rice on the floor, and glass mason jars filled with preserved tomatoes. The household was not vulnerable to a rough month because the food was already there, bought cheap when in season. Most modern households shop weekly, buy small quantities at premium prices, and throw away 30% of what they purchase. Bulk buying works in 2026 with a warehouse club membership, a chest freezer, and a vacuum sealer costing around $80. Bulk grains, frozen meats, and preserved produce run 40 to 60% cheaper per unit than weekly grocery shopping. Habit 8, grow some of your own food even on a balcony. Your great-grandmother just had a small plot or window boxes growing tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and beans because buying them at grocery store prices was not something the family budget could absorb. A single tomato plant in a 5-gallon bucket produces 10 to 30 pounds of tomatoes in a decent growing season, worth $70 to $150 at 2026 prices off a $4 plant. The Victory Garden movement during the war years grew an estimated 40% of all fresh produce consumed in the entire United States on small home plots, maintained by ordinary families with full-time jobs and kids. Start with 3 pots on a sunny balcony, tomatoes, basil, and a leafy green. Total startup cost under $30. Habit 9, make your own household goods. Your great-grandmother made her own laundry detergent, dish, soap bread, cleaning supplies, and bar soap. The modern grocery aisle is a museum of unnecessary products with separate bottles, mostly containing the same 3 core ingredients in different ratios. The same job for almost every surface in your home can be done by one spray bottle filled with water, white vinegar, and a few drops of dish soap, saving between $200 and $400 annually. A loaf of decent sandwich bread costs $5 to $7 in most US cities right now. Baking it at home costs about 60 cents per loaf and takes 10 minutes of active time. Pick 3 categories where you currently buy and try making one. Habit 10. Buy used first and new only as a last resort. Your great-grandparents did not buy a brand new anything if they could find a used version. A new car loses between 20 and 30% of its value the moment it leaves the dealership. By buying used, they let someone else absorb the entire depreciation hit and got the same functional object for a fraction of the price. The exact same couch that costs $1,800 at the showroom is available within 30 miles of your house for about $300 from someone moving across the country. The $1,500 gap is your great-grandmother nodding from across the decades. Apply this principle to your next 5 major purchases. Habit 11. Use the library before you buy anything you can borrow. Ownership was reserved for things your great-grandmother used every single week. Everything else she borrowed. Your local public library gives you free access to physical books, audiobooks, ebooks, magazines, current bestsellers, and often streaming services. The annual value of an active library card is conservatively between $500 and $1,500. Annual cost to you, 0. Buy nothing groups on Facebook redistribute thousands of dollars of goods weekly for free. Before any non-essential purchase over $20, run the borrow check first. Roughly 60% of what you were about to buy does not actually need to be purchased at all. Habit 12. Repair instead of replace. The average American household replaces between 8 and 12 perfectly functional items every single year. Phones with cracked screens that could be repaired for $60 get replaced with $1,000 new models. Vacuums with a clogged motor that could be cleaned in 20 minutes get tossed for $500 replacements. Your great-grandfather had a repair drawer with glue thread needles, spare buttons, and screws. When something broke, the first response was to look at it and fix it. The next time something breaks, spend 10 minutes searching how to fix it. About 70% of the time, the repair costs under $20 and saves you between $50 and $600 on a replacement. Habit 13. Maintain everything so it lasts. The reason your great-grandparents' things lasted was not just that they fixed them when broken, it was that they maintained them so they rarely broke in the first place. Cars got their oil changed on a strict schedule, and the same car would run for 20 years. Tools got cleaned and oiled after every use and got passed to grandchildren. The modern relationship with possessions is buy, use, neglect, replace. Maintenance happens after a problem appears, not before, which means the useful lifespan of each item is roughly a third of what it could be with 5 minutes of monthly attention. Schedule 15 minutes a week to maintain 3 things in your household. Habit 14. Secondhand clothing before any retail purchase. In a Depression era, household clothes circulated through the family and the neighborhood. A single piece of clothing had 4 or 5 distinct lives before it ever hit the trash. The average American now buys roughly 60 new garments per year, wears each piece an average of 7 times, and discards around 80 pounds of textiles annually. Thrift stores, Poshmark Depop ThredUp, and Facebook Marketplace clothing groups give you access to the exact same garments at 30 to 70% off retail. Make secondhand the first stop and new only when the search genuinely fails. Habit 15. One car or no car, depending on where you actually live. The average American household spends between $12,000 and $17,000 a year on transportation. Multiply that across 2 vehicles, and you're looking at roughly $30,000, leaving the budget annually just to move around. Your great-grandparents organized the entire household around 1 car or none. Errands got batched. Walking handled anything within 2 miles. Saving $12,000 per year by eliminating a second vehicle and investing it at historical market returns becomes well over $1 million across a working career. Habit 16. Build multiple income streams, so no single source is a single point of failure. Your great-grandfather had one primary job, and on the side, repaired neighbors' radios, cut hair on Saturdays, fixed cars, and sold eggs from backyard chickens. The household never depended on only one source of money because the generation that lived through 1929 understood single point of failure thinking the hard way. The 2026 version is skills-based freelance work, renting a spare room, selling handmade goods, or reselling items from estate sales. The point is not to chase every income stream. The point is to have more than one, so that no single layoff ever wipes out the entire household economy. Habit 17. Master practical skills. Your grandparents considered basic adulting, basic plumbing, simple electrical fixes, patching a wall, sewing on a button, changing a tire, replacing a faucet washer, basic cooking and gardening. None of these required formal certification. They were just things a competent adult could do as part of running a household. A plumber visit for a leaky faucet now runs between $150 and $400. The handyman who hangs a shelf bills between $80 and $200. Across a typical year, the average household pays out between $2,000 and $7,000 for services a moderately skilled person could handle with 30 minutes of YouTube education. Habit 18. Track every dollar coming in and every dollar going out. Your great-grandfather kept a paper ledger in the kitchen. Income on one side, expenses on the other, every transaction noted. He could tell you on any given day exactly where the household stood. No surprise at the end of the month. Apps like YNAB and Monarch now categorize every transaction automatically, but the automation makes it possible to never actually look at the numbers, which defeats the entire point. Spend 15 minutes every Sunday evening reviewing the previous week's spending. Awareness alone reduces spending by an average of 10 to 15% in the first 3 months, with no other intervention applied. Habit 19. Delay gratification using the 30-day rule. The next time you feel an urge to make a non-essential purchase over $50, write the item down with the date and refuse to buy it for 30 days. The Depression generation had this baked in by necessity. There was no one-click checkout, no algorithm putting exactly the thing you'd been thinking about in front of you at the precise emotional moment you were most likely to buy it. The 30-day rule filters out roughly 70% of impulse purchases because most desires for objects simply fade within a few days if not acted on immediately. Run this rule for 90 consecutive days, and the dollar amount that did not leave your account will be larger than you expect. Habit 20. Reuse, repurpose, and refuse to waste anything that has another life in it. Open a Depression-era kitchen cabinet, and you would find glass jars saved from store-bought goods, now holding flour and beans, old shirts cut into cleaning rags, bacon grease in a jar by the stove for cooking later in the week. The modern household has been trained to throw away packaging the moment a product is opened, interrupt the default of throwing things away by briefly asking whether the object in your hand has another life before it leaves. Once you stop seeing everything as disposable by default, the relationship with stuff changes and the urge to constantly bring new things into the house quietly weakens. Habit 21. Buy generic, not brand name, almost every single time. Your great-grandmother was not loyal to brands. Brand loyalty as a marketing concept is largely a post-war invention designed to attach emotional value to interchangeable products, so consumers would pay a premium for the label. In 1933, you bought whatever was cheapest that actually worked. The savings on store brand versus name brand items run between 20 and 40% across most grocery, pharmacy, and household categories. These products in the vast majority of cases come off the same production lines with different labels applied at the end, switching consistently from brand name to store brand saves between $800 and $2,000 annually, with no real quality sacrifice in roughly 90% of cases. Habit 22. Keep some physical cash accessible at all times. Depression survivors kept physical cash for the rest of their lives, even decades after the banks were technically safe again, because watching every dollar in a bank account vanish overnight changes how an entire generation thinks about money. You need in 2026 some amount of physical cash in your home because emergencies sometimes coincide with banking outages, power failures, or natural disasters that render every digital payment system temporarily useless. A reasonable target is between $500 and $1,500 kept somewhere secure and never touched, except in a genuine emergency. Habit 23. Avoid consumer debt as if it were a contagious disease. Total U.S. household debt sits at roughly $18.8 trillion as of early 2026. Credit card debt alone exceeds $1.28 trillion, with the average consumer carrying around $6,500 in revolving balances at 22% APR. Your great-grandparents paid cash or they did not buy. Carrying $6,500 at 22% costs roughly $1,400 per year in interest alone. Across a decade of carrying a similar balance, you have handed $14,000 of your life energy to interest payments on things you barely remember buying. Mortgages are sometimes acceptable. Everything else gets paid in cash or it does not get bought. Habit 24. Build strong community ties and treat them as financial infrastructure. Your great-grandparents survived the Depression in large part because their neighbors did too. The household was embedded in a thick web of mutual aid running underneath the official economy. A neighbor with a working car drove your grandfather to job interviews in exchange for your grandmother watching their kids. Every favor exchanged was a service nobody had to pay cash for. The modern American economy has gutted that infrastructure. Suburban geography and the assumption that every household need can be solved by an app have left most adults paying strangers in cash for things their great-grandparents got from neighbors as part of a continuous exchange of small favors. Build it back on purpose. Habit 25. Define what enough looks like in writing and refuse to chase past it. This is the habit that quietly underwrites every single one of the previous 24. Once your great-grandparents reached enough in the recovery years, they did not immediately set the bar higher just because they could. People earning $300,000 a year feel as financially anxious as people earning $80,000 because their expectations expanded at exactly the same rate as their paychecks. Define enough now in writing. What home is genuinely sufficient? What car gets the job done? Write the numbers down, then refuse to move them upward just because you can. That margin between what you bring home and what you decided was enough is where every Depression-era family built every dollar of generational wealth they ever passed down. 25 habits, not one of them complicated, not one of them invented by anyone with a podcast or a Tesla, all of them quietly building wealth for a generation that started with nothing and no apps, no investment accounts, no finance creators explaining compound interest in 15-second clips. The through line running underneath all 25 is the same. None of these habits are about aggressive investing or crypto or a viral side hustle. They are all about a relationship with money that does not depend on constant consumption to feel okay. You cannot outbudget a broken relationship with stuff. You cannot outinvest a lifestyle that expands every time your income does. The habits build the foundation, and the foundation builds the wealth. It has always worked this way. Now you have the same 25 your great-grandparents used, plus every modern advantage on top. If this video showed you something real, subscribe and share it with someone whose financial foundation could use it. Next week, we are going inside the 5 specific spending patterns that quietly destroy the wealth of people who already know all of this, but cannot seem to make it stick. See you there.